Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with the Nerdarchy crew.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
I'm Ryan.
And today we want to do a video response to A Fistful of Dice. Also, you guys will know Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice on a video he did, his 5 tips for DMs for Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. And I believe it's an older video. I was like sifting through his stuff.
It was like 2012, so yeah, going back in the archive.
But, you know, I find that for the most part, it's all still relevant.
It's extremely relevant, although I want to call bullshit on something. Matt, there were 6 tips in there. 6, not 5. You snuck one in, all right?
But it was the bonus tip.
It was the bonus tip. It's like bonus feet. Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about the video?
It was good. There's definitely some great insights into that. Into dungeon master or game mastering for someone who hasn't done, is new to the hobby. And, as a veteran, too, I feel like he touched on some points that people get hung up on.
I would agree. I think there's definitely some good stuff there. I don't know whether we want to, bullet point and talk about each one.
We may as well just bullet point and go through.
So, DM tip number 1 from Matt Click was...
Okay, so number 1 was don't go it alone, was his first tip.
And by that he means don't write all your own material. Don't
sit there. I interpret it as steal from everybody.
Steal from everyone. That's right.
He says that there's lots of resources out there. He didn't even touch on all the different methods of inspiration that we've talked about in many of our videos. But it's basically don't make every single NPC. You don't need to make your own adventure in your own world, drafting every single NPC that the players may or may not come up with. It's overwhelming when you get to that kind of level. When you've got a more experienced DM, you can certainly say, you know what, I'm just going to sit back and when they encounter somebody, hey, jot some notes down. All right, there we go. I made that guy on the spot.
Yeah, this reminds me of the lazy dungeon master tip, which is the 20% of your work doing 80% of the job kind of thing.
Well, that's actually not in there. That was something I inserted.
Oh,
but the 20/80 rule.
Then your article about the 20/80 rule.
Well,
and the lazy dungeon
so
master.
it's a quote of a quote of a quote.
Yeah,
it's
kind of. Basically, what that says is 80% of your results is going to come from about 20% of your work, and and that gets emphasized in that ebook quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it. He also happened to mention some other personal development stuff. So I was like, and that made me think of that. So I added that in there. But yeah, essentially, and that's just it. You're going to create all this material that players will probably never even see. Right. So why make more than you need?
Well, and also too is just steal from published adventures. He listed off some good book resources. Like there was a Pathfinder Dungeon Master's Guide, which, I mean, this Dungeon Master Guide has some of that sort of referential material, where, random tables that you can just go to,
the 5th edition's full of
figuring out
tables.
Figuring out the sort of what motivates your players and how to engage them.
AD&D had a lot of that stuff, and they just brought it back. They regurgitated it. And it's good, because it feels fresh and new to a lot of people that never experienced 1st or 2nd edition. Early RPGs loved tables and charts. They brought back that, and I think we still do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, just another thing you were saying is just every little piecemeal of an adventure that's come before a published adventure that you have access to, you can always yoink a map here, an NPC there, an encounter from this, and cobble it together.
Yeah, you take the pieces from everywhere, like building blocks. You put it together, and it's now your own unique creation without you having to do anything other than put it together.
Well, let's face it, they put together products that are nothing but that.
Right, yeah.
They're just entirely encounters.
Right.
So, yeah, anything like that you can throw in your game, anything that inspires you, that makes less work for you is fair game.
Yeah, reskin it, rename it, reimagine it, whatever. If the thing does fire damage, now it does acid damage because that suits your story. Whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, number 2, he talks about getting feedback. I'm huge for this. I'll spend the next 3 days calling my players after I run a game to ask them what they thought and kind of get feedback and ideas.
And you just want to hear you did an awesome job, right? That's what you're.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Right, cool. just
fishing for comments. I think that's what Matt said to do.
Yeah, I think that's the way he said to take it.
No, he says
so you can watch it. You can watch it.
There's a difference between fishing for compliments and honestly asking, "Hey, did I handle this? Did you enjoy it?
What would you like to see?"
Right. I've in the writers aspect of gamers, I've been for at least the last 15 years been a writer of modules and games for LARPs and this and that, obviously tabletop, and I'm always like seeking approval. I'm always like, hey, did I touch on this right? Did I do that right? And even with 15 years,
you totally made it sound like the compliment angle, not
the
feedback too.
He always
just
likes
wants the
the
compliment.
compliment.
Yeah.
Ted, you're great. You're awesome. You do a really good job.
Well, who doesn't like to be complimented for their work? Right?
That's just true.
But no, that your players is like one of the best resources. You can say, I hated this aspect or I love this aspect, so you know what not to put in your game and what to put in.
Yeah, if there's something that's super frustrating in the encounter, that because when I had that friggin' what was it, the Psy Dragon in the Dark Sun thing, it sucks because you guys couldn't effectively engage it at all.
Yeah, it was that was very annoying.
It was an annoying encounter. So yeah.
But I mean, as far as the asking for feedback, it creates a loop down to what I always consider like the primary GM tip, and that's write for your players. You want to give them a story they're going to enjoy, and that's challenging enough for them to get through. If they skate through every single encounter, the players aren't going to feel threatened, and they're just going to be walking through and like, oh yeah, we got this.
No way, dude. You let them skate. Let them skate. Let them skate. Let them skate. Little bit of a challenge. Let them skate. TPK, and then all of a sudden, right? They never feel like that again.
Shit just got real.
Yeah. Dave, that's more your philosophy. I like them to feel challenged. I mean, you're going to give them some encounters that that they can get through without any problems.
Nothing makes your players feel more challenged than a boat ride down the river of Styx.
But involving your players, giving them the challenge, giving them interactivity with the actual plot. That's integral. So getting the feedback, after sessions is the easiest way to make sure that you're planning your session for what they want.
Yeah, you can start to learn from this feedback over the sessions. You can start to learn the different aspects of the people out of game, how they feel about combat, how they feel about role playing, what they'd like to see, and what they'd like to interact with. You can start planning more encounters that incorporate those aspects that those players can engage in.
And, there's actually another a side benefit to doing this as well. If you're playing with a group that maybe isn't a group of your friends to begin with, you're getting new exposure to people. It actually gives you a chance outside of the game to interact with some of these people and possibly build a friendship and stronger bonds, because what I found, the people that we are greater friends with at the table, it always makes for a better experience.
I agree.
Instead of you're always hanging out with people that seem like strangers, and the only reason you guys get together is to play D&D or whatever tabletop game you're playing.
You want to be comfortable enough that if the guy says, "Hey, you want to come over for a barbecue?" We're not gaming. We're just going to hang out and have burgers. That they're going to say, "Yeah, I'm on my way."
And shit didn't just get weird.
Right.
Like, wait, are you going to ask me to help you move next time?
Right. Yeah. So, moving on to number 3. So this comes down to, which this is great because he was sort of he was being a seer, if you will, of rewarding player creativity. And one of the things he got into is he plays with fate chips that, what does he do? He gives out a poker chip, a token that says, you get to reroll a D20 roll. Which, in 2012, is basically the inspiration
for 5th edition.
For doing something cool in-game.
Yeah, well, I don't know how long Fate's been around, and Fate has been using
No,
that
yeah,
system for a long
that is...
time.
And there's other systems that do what's called bennies, So,
yeah. Right. But that really just goes back to his number one suggestion or tip, and that's basically borrow and steal from everybody to make your game better, to make the experience at the table better. So yeah, and that's one example of rewarding players. I've seen other people just hand out, and I've done it too, is give out bonus XP. I used to give XP based off of role playing, and I had some convoluted system that only I could figure out.
Yeah, I did the same thing with the
hash marks.
And monkeys drawing numbers.
My new system is really easy. They get 100 XP for role playing per level and of their character, and it makes the difference in the beginning. But towards the end, it doesn't. It's like, all right, so you gained 1,000 XP. Well, you got a while to get to that next level. So, but
does everybody automatically get it, or
no?
You have to earn it.
But it's not 0 or not. It's not 0 or 1,000. That's 1,000 is like you've done a really good job, and then I just lower it if I have. I mean, not 1,000. 100 per is a really good job, and I can just lower it or increase it.
I used to just do hash marks, and each hash mark would be like
25, 50 XP.
10 XP. Yeah. And, but no, I would give them out frequently.
Okay.
So, and at the end of it, when I tallied all the XP and divide everything up, everyone had different numbers based on that. And I would also grade on a curve. Like, if someone's already a super role player, they're not going to get as much for role playing because
it comes naturally to them.
Yeah, but the guy that's struggling at the table to say anything when he does something, he might get like 50 checks.
Yeah.
He talks for a half hour.
So, and I mean, as far as that goes, like XP reward tokens, like I know at least 2/3 of the people that are currently running games don't even really track XP. They just like every 3 sessions, like right now we're not.
And right now that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm actually looking back to some of Dave's earlier style, where it's like, you know what, I'm not even bothering to deal with XP. You guys will level when I think you guys have earned it. Both storyline wise and character growth, time duration. So it's like, I'm not even going to bother keeping track of XP. So therefore, getting role-playing XP is essentially meaningless.
Yeah.
So it's like, how
it's like whose line is it anyway?
Right, the points don't matter.
So it's like, how can I figure out a way to reward players, in a different situation?
Right, and obviously we could do like one of the optional reward systems, and one of the optional systems in the DMG is action points or hero points.
Right.
Like we can institute things like that, and there's probably other ways in game to actually reward the players.
Right, things like renown and piety based on role playing, which we'll do a full on video of that, but those are like in game systems.
Right, or just you could do things like giving your players, if the situation warrants it, titles and in-game benefits.
Right.
Or if you look at the backgrounds, that is a great source of in-game benefits that really they don't unbalance the game, and they don't really add a whole lot, but they're interesting.
Right. Like you're a soldier, and out of the potential things you could have been if you chose a lower rank, well, you just got a promotion. You're not a lieutenant or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess we can move on to the next one, which is going the extra mile. Which is just, it's like bringing some enhancements.
You have to do extra laps around the table, right?
Yeah, so it's just bringing little enhancements into the game that'll make it that much better and putting the work in.
Yeah, we've all done various things over the years, whether it's using background music,
props.
And I think that's kind of
visuals,
mainly what it falls into.
For many years, we always, we bust out the anvil of Crom every time battle starts.
Yeah, the Conan soundtrack.
But with with us recording all of our sessions now, it's like, well,
copyright.
So we don't tend to do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
But having things that are increasing people's immersion.
Yeah, I mean handouts, or you might get crazy one day and they find potions and you actually hand them a potion,
which is a Mountain Dew. Because they have different colors Mountain Dews.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
You could totally just strip the labels off of a bottle of Mountain Dew and relabel it with something.
Funny. Yeah, one of the things that Matt that brought up that he uses is he's got one of those like USB plug-in speakers. The self freestanding speaker that just plugs into your iPod or probably.
And as soon as he mentioned it, Nate got a nerd boner.
Yeah. So it's like a little.
He's like, those things are amazing.
I like them. I have one of them. They're really cool.
The Alltech speaker, right? Yeah.
It's not an Alltech exactly, but it's a similar concept. The compact miniature speaker that can plug into your phone or into your iPad.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, we'll put a link below so you can see what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But they're really nice and compact, way better than having a giant box stereo, trying to stick it someplace.
No, wait, man, I prefer a boom box like the size of Soundwave.
Are you going to put it on the side while you're DMing?
I might.
Be like, roll dice.
Yeah.
For my Transformers game.
Yeah.
Get into breakdancing.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, then you have to have breakdance fighting. And then you have to dance.
Well,
back.
if Dave tries to breakdance, it's just he's gonna break something while dancing.
Most likely myself.
Right. More than likely, you're not a spring chicken anymore. So bringing us to our final tip of involving your players.
Now, I was excited when he first said that because I'm like, all right, that's exactly how I am. I want my players to get immersed in the game. You get them involved in the actual story and plot choices. And he completely went in a different direction.
So you're thinking making story arcs that revolve around each individual character, really getting them into the whole...
because like I said, my game tip or my pro tip, whatever you want to call it, is the plan for your players. But he was like, have them tracking initiative and spell duration, have different people bringing food, and I'm like, all right, I completely disagree with all of this.
Well, now, see, I've heard those kind of things implemented often from other gamers. Some of those tips are even in the Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide, and it does make sense. Like anything that the DM doesn't have to do, just makes the game
call
run
that
smoother.
Outsourcing to the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's outsourcing to the other nation on the other side there.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with differences of opinion. My particular DM style, it's like there's that DM screen. It's a line.
No, there's definitely something wrong.
Control freak.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's kind of along the lines of like if I have NPCs in the thing, I don't want to effing run an NPC. I have all the monsters to run, and like concentrating on having them have solid tactics based on what they are. That if there's an NPC, oh, you play clerics a lot. I have this cleric NPC. You're taking his initiative turn or whatever. Because I'm running everything else on this side of the screen. They can run two characters,
And as it is, I always forget stuff.
Yeah, right,
Exactly.
I don't have a problem with running the extra NPCs, and for initiative, I usually what I do is I don't assign people roles. I ask people, and as long as you have a table that's interested in assisting you where they can, I usually ask somebody to write down the initiatives as everybody rolls them up. They write down all the players' initiatives, and then I draw lines of different colors based on the monsters, starting at the lowest initiative, going up. So as I add each one, and like they see, these two people don't go before this monster, and they're like, oh, there's two left, and one of them's the big bad, and they're both going first. That's kind of like that gets the tension up, I think, for the game,
level.
And they're doing it rather than me doing it. So it's like they're adding to their own doom. So it's kind of got
that's pretty cool, and all it's like
and they're also being a help to the game. So.
You can have people that are like chronicling the adventure, like the story of the plot and stuff like that. You have somebody like taking notes. You can have the person that's writing down the treasure. Because as GM, if I give out treasure and you didn't write it down, guess what? You guys left it behind because I'm not tracking whether you took something or not. Like by that time, it's on the other side of the table.
With that, I absolutely agree with both of that. With the whole chronicling, I feel that's whether a player at the table is actually interested in doing it. And it's usually a character who's either a heavy role player or is playing a character that would legitimately say, well, I'm going to write this stuff down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, too, though, like, that's good just because, if you go a month or two between gaming sessions, like, for your character, it was like last week or, if you like whatever in game time. But it was their life. It's more significant to them. They'll remember it. As a player, you have your job and family obligations, stuff. Real world stuff that, like, all right, this thing I get to do once every month or a couple months or however frequently you get the game, like, it kind of goes by the wayside.
So I was running the family game,
and
I turned to my players, which happen to be my family, and I go, well, they happen to be in a crypt. I'm like, are you going to keep a map? And they're like, a map? I'm like, yeah, you don't want to get lost, do you? And of course, I didn't have a map on my side, so they're building the map for me.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. No, and also too, somebody taking up the cartography duties is kind of good. I mean, on the other hand, though, like doing the labyrinth thing really isn't that fun of a gameplay, in my opinion. Like it's like where you have to like worry about turns you've taken and stuff like that because an 16 to 18 intelligence caster. They're going to just remember which way they went.
Maybe. Some people are absent-minded even though they're brilliant.
Well, or the wiser character, or the intelligent. Like, between the party, these are all way more exceptional people than the players actually running them. I mean, come on. Let's be honest. Nobody unless they're like an actual scientist or a professional this or that. Like if they're like an Olympic athlete or professional weightlifter or whatever, nobody is like a 16 plus stat in
we got
real
the
life.
level 12 intellect.
Oh yeah, we do have the level 12 intellect. So, yeah.
But you said 12, so I mean, right there.
Yeah. But here's the thing though. Like I disagree in the sense that a labyrinth is designed to confuse people.
Right.
Whether you're smart or not, if everything looks the same, everything looks the same.
How fun is it to track that game? Because that gets the bonus tip, which is the 6th tip. it's the 6th tip.
But so yeah, I'm just saying, a photographic memory is completely different than being super smart.
So, I mean, there is actually a feat for observant that probably would go along with
it might be able to invoke that.
But yeah, so if you had the feat that let you do that, so for Ryan, you know that if you do a labyrinth game, he is not going to be interested at all
in tracking
that.
Yeah, because who cares? It really where's the story? Where's the encounter? Where's something interesting? Because so the bonus tip is have fun, right? And if it's not fun, what's the point? Basically, if you have to just make 10 rolls to climb the side of a cliff, but there's nothing exciting happening other than just getting up the side of the cliff, during an encounter, that's exciting because it means something.
Right.
But outside of that, it's just it's just wandering damage or an annoyance that's just
But I think he's talking specifically to the GM. Have fun as the dungeon master, because if you're bored and not having fun, your players are going to be bored and not having fun.
Well, I mean, the have fun is universal for everyone. Do the things that are fun for the people at your table. It goes back to getting feedback from your players. If they hated something, and they're but my story really hinges on that, and I need to put another 3 of those things. Well, guess what? Next week, 2 of your players might not show up.
Make a lot. Well, that actually goes back to. Well, actually, that's in his number 5 tip. He talks about letting the player's actions actually change what you had planned.
Right.
Where he talks about how he had planned for them to do this thing, and instead they snuck in and blew up the temple, which forever even changed the geography of his world, because there was a crater in the ground where there was once a temple, and I think they were supposed to go through it or something.
I've had that happen a few times.
It was
like
a
the past 2 game sessions where it's just I had to just plan for all these contingencies and then figure out different motivation that was going to occur based on what they did last game. So it was all kinds of craziness.
Well, that's just it. You can make plans. You just can't plan the outcome, because your PCs will go crazy wonky directions every time.
Unless you want to go against, that basically trying to make what you think should happen is worse than things going crazy.
Forcing the square peg into the round hole.
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, he did talk to the other part of the coin of the involving your players. He did absolutely go into that. It was a Thieves Guild encounter type of thing, and they basically Walter Whited them from Breaking Bad, and just set off an explosive in the person's office,
or Spoonie Jihad.
Spooney's
Jihad.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of thing.
All right, so we've got his 6 tips here. Do we have any that we want to share that he didn't touch on?
That's a very good question, Ted.
Did we does he cover it all, or is there more to it?
I mean, I think we've more or less elaborated on it.
As we went along
and
with
expanded
what we do.
what we thought needed to be talked about.
I mean, and there is always more tips when it comes to GMing and running the game. But his top 5 is pretty good.
It's definitely solid. It
doesn't suck. I'll tell you that.
It's held up over time. So.
No, and that's why we said, even though he did this video years ago, it's still highly relevant.
Yeah.
So I would say, we've expanded enough on what he's had to say. We've added our own input, and we have Game Master tips as a series. So so there's of course we have other ideas,
right.
And they're in that playlist.
Yeah. But sometimes you need that quick, because I mean every one of these has 3 sub bullet points.
Yeah.
So even though it's 5 tips, it's actually more like 20. Really.
Is that counting the bonus tip?
21.
Yeah, 21. Bonus tip. There you go.
So with that, you guys can tell us what you think. If you feel that some were left out, you agree, disagree. While you're at it, like, comment, subscribe, and even share.
You can check us out on nerdarchy.com.
You can join the conversation on Reddit.
Or you can do, I don't know.
So until next time,
stay nerdy. Early RPGs loved tables and charts. They brought back that, and I think we still do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, just another thing you were saying is just every little piecemeal of an adventure that's come before a published adventure that you have access to. Like, you can always yoink a map here, an NPC there, an encounter from this, and cobble it together.
Yeah, you take the pieces from everywhere, like building blocks. You put it together, and it's now your own unique creation without you having to do anything other than put it together.
Well, let's face it, they put together products that are nothing but that.
Right, yeah.
They're just entirely encounters.
Right.
So yeah, anything like that you can throw in your game, anything that inspires you, that makes less work for you is, it's fair game.
Yeah, reskin it, rename it, reimagine it, whatever. If the thing does fire damage, now it does acid damage because that suits your story. Whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
All right.
But it was the bonus tip.
It was the bonus tip. It's like bonus feet. Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about the video?
It was good. There's definitely some great insights into that, into dungeon master or game mastering for someone who hasn't done, is new to the hobby, and as a veteran too. I feel like he touched on some points that people get hung up on.
I would agree. I think there's definitely some good stuff there. I don't know whether we want to, bullet point and talk about each one.
We may as well just bullet point and go
right,
through.
So DM tip number 1 from Matt Click was...
Okay, so number 1 was don't go it alone, was his first tip.
And by that he means don't write all your own material. Don't
I
sit there and
I interpret it as steal from everybody.
Steal from everyone, that's right.
He says that there's lots of resources out there. He didn't even touch on, all the different methods of inspiration that we've talked about in many of our videos.
Quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it. He also happened to mention some other personal development stuff. So I was like, and that made me think of that. So I added that in there. But yeah, essentially, and that's just it. You're going to create all this material that players will probably never even see. Right. So why make more than you need?
Well, and also too is just steal from published adventures. He listed off some good book resources. Like there was a Pathfinder Dungeon Master's Guide, which this Dungeon Master Guide has some of that sort of referential material, where random tables that you can just go to.
The 5th edition's full of
figuring out
tables,
figuring out the sort of what motivates your players and how to engage them.
AD&D had a lot of that stuff, and they just brought it back. They regurgitated it, and it's good, because it feels fresh and new to a lot of people that never experienced 1st or 2nd edition. Early. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with the Nerdarchy crew.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
I'm Ryan.
And today we want to do a video response to A Fistful of Dice. Also, you guys will know Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice on a video he did, his 5 tips for DMs for Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. And I believe it's an older video. I was sifting through his stuff.
It was 2012, so going back in the archive.
But I find that for the most part, it's all still relevant.
It's extremely relevant, although I want to call bullshit on something. Matt, there were 6 tips in there. 6, not 5. You snuck one in.
But it's basically don't make every single NPC. You don't need to make your own adventure in your own world, drafting every single NPC that the players may or may not come up with. It's overwhelming when you get to that kind of level. When you've got a more experienced DM, you can certainly say, you know what, I'm just going to sit back and when they encounter somebody, hey, jot some notes down. All right, there we go. I made that guy on the spot.
Yeah, this reminds me of the lazy dungeon master tip, which is the 20% of your work doing 80% of the job kind of thing.
Well, that's actually not in there. That was something I inserted.
Oh,
but the 20-80 rule.
Then your article about the 20-80 rule.
Well,
and the lazy dungeon master.
So it's a quote of a quote of a quote.
Yeah, it's kind of basically what that says is 80% of your results is going to come from about 20% of your work. And and that gets emphasized in that book ebook